Hello, everybody. Rick Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government here. Now, we've all heard about the Trump conviction, the gross misconduct, the miscarriage of justice, and the American people have responded with overwhelming financial support for the Donald Trump campaign and some other entities that are built to help the Donald Trump campaign. Around $140 million coming in over on between those various entities over the last couple of days. It's just an amazing outpouring as people sit there and say, I'm sure you, like I, sit there and say, well, we got to do something. We've got to stop this miscarriage of justice. And, it really became clear to us when the unthinkable occurred and Donald Trump got convicted on something that he wasn't even charged with. So we look at gross misconduct of the judicial system. I'm going to start with the actual thing that you can do about it, because there's something you can do more than giving the Trump campaign money. What you can do is you can contact through the Americans for Limited Government. The website is right in the comments section, the top of the comments section, to urge the state attorneys general to sue New York. So if you're in Texas, your Attorney General Ken Paxton can sue New York. Okay. If you're in Utah, your Attorney General can sue New York. If you're in Alabama, your Attorney General can sue New York. If you're in Florida, your Attorney General can sue New York. So any Attorney General from another state can sue the state of New York over the gross misconduct in terms of this prosecution, which was designed to try to deny the American people the ability to actually have a presidential contest between the walking dead that they're nominating and Donald Trump. That's what they're doing. That's their intent. And the state attorney general have an opportunity to say, no, we're not putting up with that. And the reason it's important the state attorney generals sue is because the Supreme Court is the court of jurisdiction over those lawsuits. Consequently, the Supreme Court, it forces the Supreme Court to actually take a look at it. Obviously, President Trump can sue and will sue, will appeal. But the question is, if he's forced to go through the state appeals court process and then the federal appeals court process, he'll be 2 years into his presidency before he gets this conviction overturned. So what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to give you a vehicle to actually do something to demand that your elected officials who are actually supposed to uphold the laws of the land sue the state of New York for not doing so. Sue the state of New York because they are violating your right to have a presidential contest where one rogue state isn't attempting to put their thumb on the scale using a completely fraudulent trial. A trial that denied Donald Trump his Sixth Amendment rights. The Sixth Amendment right is to know what you're charged with. He was a charged. It turns out he was charged with a election law violation that they didn't actually charge him with, and the jury wasn't allowed to know that it was a misdemeanor, not a felony. Hence, the entire structure of the case falls apart. They weren't allowed to know what the federal election law was. They weren't allowed to know that Hillary Clinton on the Russiagate was actually fined. Her campaign was fined $8,000 for paying for the Steele dossier and hiding it behind their law firm. It's exactly what Bragg actually accused Trump of. It's exactly what Bragg accused Trump of. But Hillary Clinton got an $8,000 fine and had to amend her reports. Donald Trump, is going to be sent to jail. That's their intent, is to send him to jail for the same, for what, from a legal perspective, circumstance that doesn't have any bearing. But what's even more important about it is our good friends Hillary Clinton were found guilty, and the same Federal Election Commission that found Hillary Clinton guilty, and the Democratic National Committee had to pay a $105,000 fine as well. The same Federal Election Commission said, they looked at what Donald Trump did and said, well, that's not a crime. That's not There's nothing wrong with that. That's not definable. In fact, he did everything exactly the way the Federal Election Commission would say you have to do it. So, given that, Hillary Clinton got found guilty and was fined, and Donald Trump, the same FEC, said, "Nope, Donald Trump did it right." And yet Donald Trump is going to jail because a New York jury was not allowed to hear from Brad Smith, the former head of the FEC, was not allowed to hear from Trump witnesses, was allowed to and was spoon fed a bunch of garbage, and then was given a charge that they're supposed to suppose that he was guilty of without having any ability for Trump to contest it. I mean, it's just such an abuse of the justice system. So, key to this is go to the link at the top of the comments, and please click through and send an email to your attorney general urging them to sue the state of New York for this, again, about this miscarriage of justice. The details, the legal stuff is all inside the what you'll be looking at. So you'll have, and will be included in what's sent to the AG. So you don't have to do much work on it. You can read it and so you understand it, and it's laid out that way. But all you need to do is put your first and last name, your email address, your address, city, state, zip, and then we'll go and that'll send it directly to your attorney general. One exception is Arizona, where the Arizona attorney general doesn't allow anybody to communicate with them. So one state is an anomaly, but everywhere else, the attorney general will get it. That's something you can do. It's something the elected attorney generals can do. It's something we should expect them to do. You know, these guys run for office and say, "Oh, we're gonna uphold the law." Well, this is an opportunity for them to do just that, and we should have an expectation that they will fight this and attempt to force the Supreme Court to deal with this before it's 2026. So that's the take action. But let's talk a little bit about how we got here, because it's as crazy as it may seem. You know, we're in this weird world where the actual fabric of our society is being ripped asunder. When Barack Obama said back in 2008, almost 16 years ago, that he wanted to fundamentally transform America, it was really hard for us we said, we're kind of aghast and saying, wait a second, that's an attack. But most people didn't take him seriously. They thought it was just rhetoric. Well, and 16 years later, Barack Obama's legacy is coming true, as we have a presidential candidate, a former president of the United States, who's now being threatened with jail and convicted and threatened with jail in advance of the election, turning us into a certified banana republic. In fact, I would submit banana republics should sue us for calling ourselves that, because they would never be brazen enough to do what the Democrats have done in this particular election cycle. So when we talk about the constitutional order, though, it's really important to understand that this country is dependent upon the rule of law is dependent upon people believing that the rule of law is honest and fair, that it is even-handed, that Lady Justice is blindfolded. And when people don't believe that's true, what ends up happening is they lose respect for the law, and they figure it doesn't matter that I follow it, because even if I follow the law, if I'm on the wrong side on a dispute, I'm being found guilty no matter what the facts are. That's certainly what happened to Trump. And so so you end up having the belief in the system erode and at some point collapse. You end up having, when you have people who are going into 7-Elevens and Walgreens and other places and just basically stealing everything off the shelves and walking out with full knowledge that they're not going to get prosecuted in some states, particularly in California. If you know that, and you're the person working at the Walgreens, why are you standing there working at the Walgreens for making less money in a week than these people are carrying out your store? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So you sit there and you break down because the to break down the rule of law. You break down the rationale for actually working and being productive rather than just being a ravager and stealing stuff. These are the consequences of the Biden policy, the Obama Biden policy that President Trump had the audacity of attempting to reverse in his 4 years in office. We look at so many other issues where the fabric of society is torn. One of the things, the idea that the judge in the Trump case has a daughter who is raising millions of dollars on the fact that Trump was being prosecuted. I mean, that's a conflict of interest, but the judge didn't care. The judge just proceeded along. It didn't. Laura Loomer showed that the Brennan Center for Justice has been allowed into the courtroom so they can report live from the courtroom. And guess who they represent? Who represents them? The judge's daughter. What a neat little deal for them. They get to have more members. They get to have live access. And I don't know if they would have had it otherwise, but the fact that the judge's daughter brags about building up their online constituency certainly kind of conflicts with the idea that when the judge lets them in because his daughter makes money off of it. That's a bit of a problem. It kind of breaks the idea of equal justice. You look at, but that was Laura Loomer's report, and she did a good job on that. I just 20, 30, 40 years ago, whenever it was, that was as a lobbyist for National Rifle Association, as many of you know. And they were trying to ban semi-automatic firearms in New Jersey. And I sat there and I would have these conversations, these philosophical conversations. And I would say, because they were the law that they actually did pass banned the possession of the guns. And so I would sit there and I would constantly talk about the tearing of the fabric of society. When you turn law-abiding people into criminals, they fundamentally lose respect for the law and the actual legitimacy of the law. And this demonstration that not even Donald Trump, not even a former president, is safe from a political prosecution after watching what's happened from the FBI on J6 defendants and court systems in the District of Columbia that are, shall we say, not open to actually allowing a defense to be heard. After watching that, you sit there and you say, what is going on in this country? Do we still exist as a country? And that's a big problem. And it's a problem that when you destroy the constitutional order and people start asking that question, how many of those people who ask that question are going to say, gee, I can't wait for my son or daughter to go pick up arms to defend the country? Well, if the red, white, and blue doesn't stand for what the red, white, and blue used to stand for, if it doesn't stand for freedom and liberty, it just stands for, gee, we're fighting to make sure that whoever's in power keeps their power. Well, that destroys the legitimacy of our country. And ironically, the left has been trying to do that. Joe Biden ran in 2020 that America wasn't great. He made no bones about it. They attacked the legitimacy, his followers attacked the legitimacy of the founding fathers, attacked the legitimacy of the idea that America was exceptional, and attacked the legitimacy of this simple concept that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Attack that basic fundamental concept. And what do they want to replace it with? They want to replace it with the rights come from the government. Our DNA says our rights come from God, and the government, we form a government so that we can kind of have balls and strikes called on even-handed basis between us. That's why we form a government. That's what the Constitution says. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. But now, if the rights come from government, if your rights come from government, you don't have any rights. You only have privileges that they allow you to have. If the government's doling out privileges, as in a two-tier justice system, they have the capacity to determine who's guilty and who's not guilty, not based on facts, not based on a law, but based on who's a threat, who they don't like, who hasn't bowed down, who hasn't conformed. That's what they're doing to this country, and we have to take it back. One of the ways to do that, once again, is if you go to the top of the chat, you will see taking action by telling your attorney general, urging your state attorney general to sue the state of New York. It is, in my mind, the state attorney general, your state attorney general, particularly if they're Republican, has every right to do this and should, because we have to get the Supreme Court to deal with this issue. Now we've been pushing this idea out on the web, and let me tell you, it's on fire. We've been spending a lot of money promoting it, and this thing is just taken off like a rocket ship. So this is an idea you won't be alone on. And if you have already done it, go to the link and share the link with your friends on all the different social media platforms, because the more links get shared onto various social media platforms, the more you end up, the algorithm allows it to continue to grow. And so you really make a big difference by doing that. We have something that can be done. It's legitimate, and we have to fight for it. And truth be told, giving money to Donald Trump is a great thing, and it's important. But Donald Trump can't be forced to try to fight this all by himself. It's time those people who talk about being law and order conservatives, who run for state AG, it's their time to step up and say, we will not allow these abuses to stand. We're going to stand firm against New York, and we're going to try to get the Supreme Court of the United States to take this seriously now. Because recognize, one of the things that the New York government is trying to do now is they're trying to have President Trump in jail, prior to the convention. So he would have to give, and they scheduled the sentencing for June 11th. And once they sentence him, there's no guarantee they're going to let him out even on bail. They could say, no, you got to be in jail. At which point, Donald Trump would have to give any kind of acceptance speech for the Republican National Convention from jail if he was allowed to do it at all. That's that's putting your thumb on the scale on the election pretty hard. And so Robert Romano wrote about this today. There's a real question as to whether or not the Republican National Committee should, in fact, have a online nomination and part of the convention with President Trump speaking online before that sentencing hearing. So he's able to give his speech, tell America why they should elect him as president, and not be encumbered by having to look through steel bars to be able to give the message. I mean, we're dealing in a unprecedented circumstance, and the left is not fooling around. They don't care what rules they break, what norms they destroy, what rights have to go by the wayside. Because for the left, the ends justify the means. They believe they are close to the complete breakdown of the fabric of our nation's society and the destruction of the individual liberty DNA that constitutes it. They believe they're on the cusp of winning, and they cannot allow Donald Trump to be president again, because this time he actually knows what they're doing, and he knows what can be done to stop it. And it scares the heck out of him, and it should. So folks, take an action today. Share the call for your state AGs to go and take action and to file suit against New York. And tonight, say a prayer for our country. This country has almost made it 250 years in 2 years in 2026, July 4th. We're going to be celebrating the 250th year of the Declaration of Independence. The question is, will the Declaration of Independence mean anything in 2026? And it won't if we allow the essence of our country to be annihilated. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate it. I'm going to see what if we've got any. So I'm going to just jump off and just thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much. And this is Rick Manning, Americans for Limited Government. Please share this video.